Hi guys, on tonight's show I'm going to do something a wee bit different because tonight I'm going to be sharing with you 3 of my favourite youth work activities if I were working with young people to try and develop their communication skills, their listening skills or their confidence. Alright, massive aspects of what being a youth worker is that informal education and developing soft skills, and the activities that I'm going to show you tonight do exactly that. Alright, activity number 1. Absolute classic. I love this game. It's one of my go-to games. And why do I bring it up first? I'll tell you why I bring it up first. I bring it up first because not only is it a great game for developing communication skills, but it's just a great laugh. And you'll know what it's like sometimes when you come into a youth group, sometimes it's maybe a bit flat, it's maybe not quite vibing yet. This is a great game to bring energy into any room, actually. Any room, right? Brilliant. I've done this with primary school kids, high school kids, I've done this with adults, and every time it gets the same reaction, right? So what is the game? The game is the classic, ultimate rock, paper, scissors. All right, a game that we all know, that we've all played, but I promise you, if you need to get a vibe in the room and to get young people speaking and communicating, this is your game. Because we all know, remember, communication isn't just verbal, right? This is a soft way for some of the young people through a game to get to up their confidence in terms of communicating with each other, because they might not actually have to even speak to each other at the start, but I promise you they will by the end. So how do we play extreme rock, paper, scissors? This is how we do it. You get the group to find a partner. They'll face their partner in 2 lines facing each other. You number each part or each pair 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is, right? You've basically got a top at number 1 and you've got a bottom group at maybe number 8 or whatever that is. If you have an odd number, that's fine, don't worry about that, because that spare person can stand down at that bottom group being the caller. They can be the person that starts the game by saying the rock, paper, scissors, and we go and shoot. And I'll argue anybody that tells me different to that. It's rock, paper, scissors, shoot, right? So that person calls it rock, paper, scissors, shoot. You know the score. Scissors beats paper, paper beats rock, and rock beats scissors. What happens then after you've done your rock, paper, scissors, shoot? This is what happens. If you win, you move up 1 place, right? If you lose, you move down 1 place. And that's where the communication comes in and the hilarity comes in. It gets really competitive, but it gets really competitive in a way that's no overbearing for anybody that doesn't particularly like that sort of level of competition that can happen sometimes when we play like hockey or football or whatever, right? It's a bit more low key and done in a really fun manner. So rock, paper, scissors, shoot. I win, I move up, unless I'm already in position 1. If I'm in position 1, I didn't go anywhere. If I'm in the final position, say position 8 for the purposes of this, I didn't go anywhere either. Everybody else moves up or down except us. If, though, there was a spare person, the person who lost in number 8 would become the caller, and that's how we keep everybody involved in that game. I promise you that game will bring energy and life to your session, but it will also bring people up with that and bring their confidence up in terms of being involved in the group. Because even if they didn't know anybody, that's an easy way. Like I say, it's a brilliant kind of icebreaker that you can do every week if you wanted, but it's a brilliant kind of icebreaker that gets everybody involved early. So what's my second activity? My second activity is called, I call it wisnae me. For me personally, I used to call that the Muirhouse motto. Growing up in Muirhouse, wisnae me was something I said all the time. And basically what happens in this game is you didn't need much equipment. It's just chairs, really. Now, if you've got chairs, great. If no, people can sit on the floor in order. But basically what happens is you get your chairs in a wee sort of semicircle. Again, you've maybe got a collar out front that could be used, a youth worker. It might be one of the young people if they fall off a chair, say 8, right? But we'll go with this again. Basically what happens is you have your chairs set up. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is. You can do this with 50 people, but I recommend it's a great game for numbers anywhere between 6, 8, 10, right? You have a great time with that. And like I say, you've got the person calling as well, whether that's you or one of the young people, right? You've got the chairs in a semicircle, and basically what the premise is you're trying to work yourself through whatever chair you're at up to position number 1, right? That's how you're trying to do it. And how do you do that? This is how you do it. The caller or the youth worker stands up and says something along the lines of, the Prince of Pilton has lost his hat and number 4 has it. Number 4 has to stand up nice and quick, whether they're on a chair or sitting down, and they have to answer, no mate, it wasn't me mate, number 6 has it, right? So they then point the finger at somebody else in that group. Straight away number 6 has to jump up, no mate, it wasn't me mate, number 3 has it, and so on and so forth. And we keep going with that until somebody makes a mistake. And if you make a mistake, for example, you take too long, right, to answer, or you mumble and stumble and whatnot, then you lose your place. There's much hilarity. It's like, hey, that's you, your seat. Down you go. You take position 8 if that was a final one, for example. And everybody that was below you, so say I was number 3, everybody for chair 4 down the way would move up 1 space. So their number changes, but they're moving closer to seat 1. The beauty of this game is, again, it's quite competitive, but it's done in a fun manner. But later on, you can actually have a conversation about social mobility and how easy it is to actually move along the chairs in life, and you know, in the real world, right? I've actually done this game though with a couple of young people who were mute by choice, and they came along and just watched for a couple of weeks, and eventually they took part, and I actually got them speaking. So it can be quite profound and quite powerful actually, this game. Ultimately though, you're trying to get to seat number 1. You can decide to do it over a number of rounds or a time limit or whatever, and you can change it, you know, the Prince of Polton Lusty's car or whatever. You can change it every time, and if you do have somebody that's not particularly want to take part, they could be the caller. But again, that's really working on developing their listening and communication skills and their confidence. But there's a couple of things you can do to add to it as well. If we're really talking about working on the young people's listening skills, a real easy way of doing that is after a number of rounds, and the hilarity and it's going really well, because this gets going as well, I promise you that. Once it settles down a wee bit, you can actually get to a point where you can whisper it. You can whisper, the Prince of Polton has lost his bag and number 7 has it. And it really focuses the group to have to listen really well to what's been said. They still have to get up and respond, but this time they'll whisper it as well, right? So it's really testing the listening skills. And I've worked on this game with young people who, if they're in a classroom or a youth group environment, you think there's no chance. But I can guarantee you this game will work, and they will fully engage in this because they want to get to that seat number 1. And the person at seat number 1, they want to stay there. There's a wee bit of strategy to the game, because the young people eventually realise that actually there's no point me saying, you know, number 6 has it if I'm in seat number 4. You need to try and get 3, 2 or 1 to make a mistake so that you can move up that ladder or up the chairs. Alright, so that's game number 2. Game number 3, another classic, but one of my favourites. It comes with many, many different names, but I quite just like calling it Mousetrap. Alright, and basically what happens here is you get a group. It could be in a field, it can be in a classroom if you've got that trust with them. It can be wherever you want that there's obstacles. You can start off in a field where there's no obstacles, but obviously you need to do your wee bit of health and safety. And your risk assessment, just make sure there's no potholes or anything like that, Doug's dirt. You can what it's like around some places. Make sure it's clear and safe for the young people. But basically how it works, again, is you get the group into pairs, right? And if you've got a blindfold, one person becomes the blindfolded person and the other one is a guide. Now, if you didn't have a blindfold, it doesn't matter. Most of these activities you can do with very little equipment, right? What young people have done with me in the past is they've had a hoodie, they've turned a hoodie round and they've pulled the hood up over their face, but that way. Others have just used their jumper or whatever to tie like a blindfold over them. So you can use whatever, a jumper, a t-shirt, whatever, right, to be blindfolded. And then basically the premise is that the guide has to guide their partner across the field or across the room, anything where there's a few obstacles, safely to the other side, right? So this doesn't just work on their confidence, their communication and listening skills, but also develops trust between the two young people, all right? And I always really nail that at the start. I really nail this. There can be no mucking about here. You are keeping your partner safe. You wouldn't like to be the person that was hurt on account of them not looking after you. So I'm really, really big on that. So we nail that at the start. We kind of contract that at the start. But we also have the young people maybe go away for a minute or two so that they can come up with commands that they fully understand, because you can what it's like. You speak to somebody or whatever and you go away and you think you heard something and it meant something. Their map of the world is slightly different to what yours is. So we make sure, or I make sure, that they go away, they get that wee bit of time together just to really be clear on what the instructions are. Builds that confidence, and it's forcing them to communicate. Obviously, they're having to listen, they check for understanding, and then they get going. And I've progressed this activity with groups, like I say, just over a field, or just in a gym hall that's pretty clear for a line to a line, or over a field. You know, a line to a line, a quite clearly defined start, a clearly defined end. But I've built that up where there's obstacles like tyres. I've done it in woods where there's tripping hazards, there's overhead branches, there's, you know, the obstacles are harder to get by. But you build it up, you build that trust, you build their confidence, and you build their communication skills. So it gets to the point that they feel comfortable doing that. And I've never had anybody fail yet. One of the safeguards I would say is, you know, I always say to young people, never ever touch anybody unless they've given you permission. Young people will tend to take, you know, their partner by the arm or whatever and try to guide them. And I'm always sort of saying to them, look, didn't you just do that? Get that permission. If you feel you need to do that, get that permission at the start. Do you mind if I'm a wee bit worried if I just take your arm? Get that consent early for the young people and the partners, just because I think it's another important lesson that's in there, that you can't just presume that you can take somebody's arm. You know, you've got to get permission for that. So there's so many things to these games that I think can be really, really beneficial. I hope you can use them and expand them into your own practice. You might have heard of them, but I always like to think, how can you progress that? How can you make it different, right? So try them out in your groups. I promise they'll work, and over time they will help develop that confidence, that listening, and them communication skills. So feel free to comment if you've got anything to add to that. Obviously, if you want to learn more games, I've got more games that I'm going to be sharing. If you want to make sure you didn't miss out on that, make sure you subscribe. And I look forward to bringing you the next episode of the Scottish Youth Work Podcast soon. See you after.